Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're watching this late at night, let me know where you're from and what time it is where you are. That way YouTube knows you want more stories just like this, delivered straight into the dark. Now let's begin. Emily had only been working at the Briarwood Inn for a few weeks when she first noticed room 313 behaving differently. Briarwood was an aging business hotel tucked just off a sleepy stretch of highway in Vermont. It had once been considered charming, even elegant, but years of neglect had left it with creaky floorboards, flickering lights, and a faint scent of mildew that never quite left the carpets. Still, it saw its share of business travelers, truckers, and the occasional lone vacationer, people passing through who didn't ask too many questions. On the morning of July 3rd, a man named Douglas Fenn checked out of room 313. Early 60s, polite, well-dressed. He returned the key card with a tired smile, left a short review on a paper comment card. Quiet room, comfortable bed, slept like the dead, and rolled his suitcase out the door. Nothing strange. Until a few hours later when Emily noticed the key card for room 313 was missing from the drawer. She paused. That wasn't possible. No one had been checked back into the room. She opened the reservation system. Room 313 was still marked as vacant. And yet, when she checked the hallway camera feed, she saw something that froze her blood. At 2:11 p.m., someone had entered room 313 using a key. The figure on the grainy black and white security footage looked exactly like Douglas Fenn. Same gray overcoat, same maroon suitcase, same slow gait. The only difference? His face. On the screen, it looked strangely soft, blurred almost, like the camera couldn't properly focus on it. Emily told herself it must be a glitch. Maybe the wrong video had loaded. She rewound it, watched it again. The man entered the room, turned slightly toward the camera, and for one split second, the image froze. Douglas's face, what little was visible, was blank. Not in expression, but in form. A flat expanse of skin like a mannequin. No eyes, no mouth. Just smooth flesh where his features should have been. At 4:30 p.m., the cleaning crew knocked on room 313. There was no answer, but it was marked as empty, so the housekeeper, Rosa, unlocked the door and stepped in. What she saw sent her screaming back into the hallway. There, seated neatly at the edge of the bed, was Douglas Fenn, still wearing the same clothes, still holding his suitcase in his lap, and very much dead. The coroner estimated time of death between 11 a.m. and 1 p.m., which made no sense. He had supposedly returned to the room after that. There were no signs of injury, no indication of foul play. His body was completely cold. Even stranger, his paper comment card was found on the nightstand, the same one he had left at the front desk hours before. Emily reviewed the security footage again. There was no record of anyone entering the hotel after Douglas left. No vehicle pulling up, no one walking in. And yet, the camera clearly captured him returning. She brought this to her manager, who watched in silence before calmly instructing her never to mention it again. Room 313 will be sealed, he said. Some things don't want to be investigated. That night, unable to sleep, Emily did some digging. She found 2 other incidents tied to room 313 over the last decade. One man reportedly vanished mid-stay, and another had been found in the bath, eyes wide open, water untouched, heart stopped with no explanation. There was a pattern. Some guests checked out, and some came back. But what returned wasn't them. To this day, room 313 remains locked. The hallway camera feed for that section was quietly disabled, and though Emily no longer works at the Briarwood Inn, she still dreams of the blank face she saw on that screen. And worse, sometimes she sees it in the mirror. It was 1:17 a.m. when Thomas DeLuca checked into the Crescent Heights Motel just off Route 12. He'd been driving for over 14 hours straight, halfway across state lines for a job interview, and decided to stop at the first place he saw with a glowing vacancy sign. The motel was old, 2 stories, horseshoe-shaped around a cracked parking lot. Only a few cars sat outside. The front desk clerk, a tired man with yellowed eyes, didn't even look up as Thomas walked in. "Only got one room left," the man mumbled. "Room 210, you okay with that?" Thomas nodded. He wasn't picky. He just needed to sleep. He paid in cash and got the key, an old-fashioned brass one on a plastic tag. Room 210 was upstairs, end of the row. The hallway smelled like wet carpet and something vaguely metallic. The room itself was better than expected. Stale but clean. A small TV, lamp that buzzed slightly, curtains drawn. He kicked off his shoes, tossed his bag on the chair, and fell into the bed face first. He didn't even change clothes, just passed out. He woke up to the sound of a knock. Tap, tap, tap. Then silence. He sat up, heart pounding, looked at the clock. 2:44 a.m. Another knock, this time longer. Tap, tap, tap. He walked to the door and looked through the peephole. No one was there, just the quiet hallway and the dim light above room 209 next door, slowly flickering. He turned the deadbolt, shook his head, and went back to bed. Probably just some drunk guest trying the wrong door. But at 3:06 a.m. he heard it again. Not knocking this time, movement. A creaking sound, like someone pacing back and forth in the room next to his. And then something else. A muffled voice, or voices. Low, rhythmic, almost like chanting. He pressed his ear against the wall shared with room 209. A pause, then, "Don't open the door. Don't open the door. Don't open the door." Over and over, soft, monotone. Thomas grabbed his phone, ready to call the front desk, but there was no signal. He tried the room phone. Dead. He grabbed his jacket and walked back down to the lobby. The night clerk looked up as if expecting him. "Is everything okay in room 209?" Thomas asked. The man didn't speak right away. He just stared, then said flatly, "That room is empty." Thomas laughed awkwardly. "Well, someone's in there. They've been pacing and talking through the wall for an hour." The clerk slowly reached under the counter and pulled out a worn leather binder. He opened it. "Room 209's been sealed since 2003 after the accident." "Accident?" Thomas asked. The clerk didn't answer. He simply slid the guest book toward Thomas, pointing to a name dated July 19th, 2003. Cara DeLuca. Thomas froze. That was his sister. She'd gone missing 21 years ago while on a solo road trip. Last heard from in a call she made from an unknown motel. "I think someone's watching me," she had whispered. They knocked 3 times, and then stopped. Her car was later found at a rest stop 40 miles away. She was never seen again. Thomas's knees buckled. He stared at the name, the date, the signature, her handwriting. It was real. He turned to look back down the hallway toward room 209. The door was open now, just slightly, and in the darkness beyond, a silhouette stood, unmoving, watching. He never stayed the night. He left his bag, his clothes, even his wallet. He drove through the rest of the night without stopping. When he returned 2 weeks later with a police officer, room 209 was sealed with bricks from the inside. No way in, no door, no record of his stay. Only the name in the guest book, and the voice in his dreams every night since. "Don't open the door." For over a century, the Hawthorne Grand Hotel had stood as a proud relic of a bygone era. Velvet curtains, winding staircases, and chandeliers that swayed even when there was no breeze. It had also seen its share of tragedy, fires, suicides, disappearances. But most employees, like Julia, a housekeeper in her 3rd year, learned to ignore the whispers. until the day she was asked to clean room 504. The call came in just after noon. 504 needs a full reset, her supervisor said. Guest left early, keys at the desk. Julia blinked. I thought 504 was blocked for maintenance. Was, her supervisor replied. But someone booked it last night, no big deal. She didn't think much of it until she opened the door. The first thing that hit her was the cold, not AC cold, dead air cold. Like the room hadn't been lived in for decades. The second thing was the smell, a faint mix of old wood, burnt hair, and something sour. Something wrong. The bed was made, the mirror fogged. But what stopped her was the tiny red backpack in the middle of the floor. It was open. A small drawing pad lay next to it, a few crayons, a sock. She picked up the pad and saw the drawings, crude but clear. Stick figures, a little girl, and a tall, dark shape always standing behind her. Julia backed out of the room and went straight to the front desk. Did a family stay in 504 last night? The receptionist checked. Only one name, an adult woman, checked in alone, left this morning at 5:17 a.m. No notes, no complaints. Julia returned to the room with another housekeeper, Maria, and together they inspected it again. Now the backpack was gone. Julia stared, speechless, but Maria turned pale and whispered, "You shouldn't have picked up the pad." That night, Julia couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same drawing, the tall black figure looming over the child. At 3:08 a.m., she received a text from an unknown number, no words, just a photo. It was a scan of the same drawing pad page, except this time the little girl was gone. Only the dark figure remained. The message disappeared before she could reply. The next morning, she demanded to know who had stayed in the room. After some pushing, the manager revealed that room 504 hadn't been booked by anyone in their system. No check-in, no credit card, no key logged out. But there was one incident back in 1976. A woman had jumped from the 5th floor window, room 504. Her daughter, Emily, had gone missing the same night, last seen drawing in the lobby. Her red backpack was never recovered. They never found her. Julia felt sick. She hadn't told anyone the girl's name, but that night in her locker, she found a single drawing taped to the inside. A crude sketch of her, Julia, asleep in bed. And behind her, the same tall, dark figure, closer now, watching. She quit that week, left town entirely. But even now, years later, every once in a while, a message appears in her inbox. No sender, no subject, just a single scan, a drawing. And every time, the figure is closer. Caleb Ford was no stranger to travel. As a tech consultant, he practically lived in hotels, chain properties that all looked the same. Beige walls, breakfast buffets, polite disinterest. But the Harlan Regency in Philadelphia was different. It looked standard enough, 12 floors, neutral lobby, polished marble. But Caleb would later say it wasn't the hotel itself that unsettled him. It was what happened between the floors. He checked in late, around 11:40 p.m., after a delayed flight. The front desk handed him a keycard for room 814, 8th floor, far end of the hall. He stepped into the elevator alone. It smelled faintly of cleaner and metal. The moment the doors shut, he pressed 8 and leaned back, scrolling his phone. Then the elevator stopped. No jerk, no shake, just silence. The lights flickered. The buttons went dark. The hum of motion vanished. Caleb looked up. The floor screen above the door was blank. He hit door open. Nothing. The temperature dropped. He wasn't moving. And then came the sound. Not from the elevator itself, but from behind the mirrored wall. Scraping, like something sharp dragging along metal. Then a low whisper, faint, repetitive. He held his breath and leaned closer. He's almost here, he's almost here. Then silence. The elevator suddenly surged to life. Ding, floor 8. The doors opened, but the hallway wasn't right. It was the 8th floor, but it was wrong. The fluorescent lights were dimmed to a yellow flicker. The carpet was damp beneath his feet. The wallpaper peeled in long curls. Every room door on the floor hung slightly ajar, and the numbers were upside down, some scratched off. Caleb stepped out slowly. The air smelled burnt like melted plastic and old wiring. He turned to retreat, but the elevator was gone. Not just closed, gone. Where the doors had been, there was now just smooth wallpaper. No buttons, no seams, just wall. He walked the corridor. The hall curved subtly, too long for one floor. Then he saw it. A little girl's handprint, small, red, smeared on the wall beside room 829. He backed away. That's when he heard it. Wet footsteps, slap, 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 approaching from behind. Bare feet on damp carpet. Then a whisper. "You're not supposed to be here." He turned. No one. But down the corridor, a figure stood in shadow. Tall, not moving. He ran. Room numbers blurred by 842, 850, 871, too high for an 8th floor. He turned a corner, and suddenly, he was back in the elevator, standing exactly where he had been, button still lit, timer ticking. Only 9 seconds had passed. When the doors opened again, this time to the real 8th floor, it was brightly lit, clean, quiet. The hallway was short, symmetrical, normal. At the front desk, he asked the night clerk what had happened. The man raised an eyebrow. "That elevator's locked down. Has been for 24 hours. You must have used the service one." "No," Caleb said, showing him the call button he used. The staff just looked at each other. "Sir, that panel hasn't worked in years." That night, back in room 814, Caleb unpacked his suitcase. Everything was as he left it, except one thing he didn't recognize. A keycard, old, metallic, covered in rust. But what chilled him was the number etched on it. Room 666. There was no room 666 in the Harlan Regency. The hotel only had 12 floors, and none of them had that number, by design. He showed the card to the staff the next morning. They claimed they'd never seen anything like it. He still keeps it in a drawer, because ever since that night, elevators sometimes pause when he's alone, just long enough for him to hear something whispering through the walls. When Amanda and her husband Kyle booked the weekend getaway, they just wanted quiet. No phones, no emails, just a small town inn nestled near the Blue Ridge Mountains, far from their buzzing lives in Atlanta. They found the Black Lantern Inn by accident, one of those rustic lodges with vintage wood furniture, a fireplace in every room, and faded family portraits that hadn't moved in decades. Room 102 was on the first floor, right across from the check-in desk. Nothing fancy, queen bed, wooden dresser, large mirror bolted to the wall across from the bed. Amanda didn't like that mirror. The first night she had a dream, a vivid, uncomfortable one. She was lying in bed staring at the mirror, and in the reflection, a man was standing in the corner of the room. She couldn't see his face, just a dark silhouette. He didn't move. He didn't blink. She tried to scream, but her mouth wouldn't open. When she woke, the mirror was fogged, and there was a fingerprint in the condensation. Not hers, not Kyle's. Long, thin, pressed right in the center. Kyle laughed it off. Maybe a maid had touched it earlier. Amanda wasn't convinced. The second night, it got worse. Around 3 a.m., Amanda woke up gasping. The room was ice cold despite the heater being on. Kyle was asleep facing the wall. She glanced at the mirror. The man was there again, only this time he was closer. Still just a shadowy figure, unmoving. But Amanda saw something new, the reflection of herself lying in bed, but not matching her actual movements. She lifted her hand. The woman in the mirror didn't. Instead, the mirror version of Amanda turned her head toward the figure and whispered something. Amanda bolted upright, heart racing. The mirror was clear. The figure was gone. She told the front desk in the morning. The receptionist stiffened. Room 102 used to be part of a double suite, she said quietly. But after the incident, We closed off the connecting room, walled it in. Amanda frowned. What kind of incident? The woman hesitated, then whispered. A guest in that mirror, years ago, claimed she could see her dead husband in the reflection. She spoke to him for nights. Then one morning she disappeared. Amanda pressed further. The woman leaned in. The wall behind that mirror, it's hollow. Amanda and Kyle checked out early. But months later, back home, Amanda was unpacking a forgotten weekend bag. Inside was a printed photo they had taken of room 102. Just a casual selfie. But in the background and in the mirror was the man. Blurry, but unmistakable. Wearing a vintage black coat, no eyes, just a pale gray face, standing behind Amanda's reflection. She stared at the photo for a long time, chills running down her spine. When she looked in her bedroom mirror later that night, there was something faint behind her. If you ever find yourself in a quiet hotel room, take one last look in the mirror before you turn off the lights, because some guests never check out. Don't forget to subscribe to the Horror Channel 786 for more terrifying true stories. And tap the bell icon so you never miss what's lurking in the dark.